All right, welcome back to another video on classes. We're going to continue working with a mutator here, but we're going to talk about a little bit about design decisions with mutators and maybe a little bit of a more complicated mutator here. So our next goal, we now can create teams, we can now change the mascot name. Well, we also need to be able to play games, right? If our purpose of our team is to allow our teams to play games and to record their win percentages or their records or whatever you want to call it, then we need a method to be able to play games. Now, we could make a method that says, lose a game. And when that happens, we may just add 1 to the games played and leave games 1 alone. And then create another method that's called win a game that adds 1 to games played and adds 1 to games won. So there's a couple ways to approach it, but really we only need one method as long as we write it correctly. And so we're gonna create a method called play game that does not need to return anything because we're just playing a game. We don't need to know anything about the class for this. We just want to be able to play a game. And if we put in no inputs, then when we play our game, we have no way to track whether we won or lost. Now, again, if we wrote it differently, if we said public void win game, public void lose game, then neither of those would need inputs. We'd know exactly what to do. But this is a little cleaner solution, a better design solution. If we create play game and take in a value to indicate whether it was a win or loss. Either way, you're playing a game. We just need to know whether you won or lost the game to know exactly how to update our games played and games won variables. So if we want to know kind of a true or false, win or lose, what we call a binary choice, a yes or a no, then the right variable for that is a Boolean. Because Boolean is true or false. And so we're going to read in a Boolean that's either true or false to indicate whether you won or lost. So I'll call it did we win? I don't know. It's probably a lengthy name. We could just do won. It's probably an easier way. So that way, when we call the method, we know to pass in whether we won or not. So if we won, and for now I'll write it if 1 equals true. Remember, Booleans are either true or false. But I'll show you a shortcut to this. This is actually, you're doing way too much work if you do this. But if 1 is true, then what do we need to do? So this is saying we're going to play a game, and the user told us we won that game. Well, 2 things need to happen. We need to make games played go up by 1, and games won go up by 1. So those 2 things have to happen. We played a game and we won a game. Let's write an else. So if one does not equal true, that means 1 must be false. That means we played a game but we did not win. So we just have to do one thing: games played plus plus, or games played plus equals 1. Right? Remember that there's several ways to write this. I'm going with the shortest version because I like writing less code. And really, if you're doing a plus plus, you typically don't put a space here. I don't think anyone would fault you either way, but games played plus plus, games played plus equals 1. And remember, this is also the same as games played equals games played plus 1. Hopefully that's a little reminder for you guys. I'm going to stick with plus plus. So when we play a game, if we win, we add 1 to games played and 1 to games won. If we lost, then we just add 1 to games played. Now, I mentioned a little earlier that this is, well, really what it is messy. So Booleans are either true or false. If statements work on evaluating whether something is true or false. If we just pass in the 1, then if I tell it that I played a game, so let's say that Elon played a game and they won, I'm going to pass in true. So that true is passed in as the value of 1. So this Boolean is true. And then we're basically saying if true, games played plus plus, games won plus plus. And that's actually how Booleans work, right? Instead of, using a Boolean variable here, if I do 3 less than 5, well, the way it works internally in Java is it evaluates this expression, and if it's true, then it literally gives the value true, the same thing I typed in up here. So typing the value 1 is like giving it an expression that is true if 1 is true, or an expression that's false if we pass in the value false. So if it's false, we're going to go to our else. If it's true, we're going to go to our if. So in this case, we're going to test out the play method. That's the wrong word. It should not be constructor. Your version will be updated. Play method for winning a game, and the play method for losing a game. I guess when I was writing these notes the first time, I got a little trigger happy with the word constructor. But this is a method. So we're playing a game, we're going to win one, and then we're going to lose one. Okay, so again, the translation from how do we call the method to what does the method do. Methods can have conditionals, they can have loops, they can have really cool logic. They don't just have to be really basic, return a value or update a value. And in fact, if that's all they did, then it wouldn't be very interesting. Classes wouldn't be particularly useful. So all the things you've learned in CS1 are going to be applied, but they might be applied inside of a method more commonly than you're used to at this point. So we're going to play a game, we're going to win one, then we're going to lose one. If I run it right now, well, what am I missing? I'm missing proof that this worked, that I actually changed anything. So to see that, I'm going to make use of my good old handy dandy toString method. Excuse me. That prints out some key information here. And I want to make sure that this all makes sense. So to start with, in line 20, I play a game with true. That means that I should have won a game. And if I now print out Elon's record, well, my Elon Phoenix team has now played one game and won one game. So later, when we try to calculate a win percentage, we'd have 100% win percentage, right? One win, one game played. So that seems like it makes sense. It's something that we can track. The numbers, I think, make sense. And so then our next line, in line 24, we played a game and lost. And so if we look at our record then, the Elon Phoenix have now played 2 games and won 1. So that makes sense. Now we have a 50% win percentage. So I think everything looks like it's updating properly. So this kind of testing is really important when you're writing a class, not only to just call the method, but also to have some sort of printout to make sure that the method worked. It did what it was expected. The output, the information stored, is logical. And we have good information here. So hopefully that makes sense. We'll be doing a little bit more method practice here, but hopefully it's starting to click a little bit. Starting to see how passing a value in gets passed into our input value, which we can then use to decide how to either update more values in our code, or if we're doing an accessor, which we'll get to in a little bit, to get information out of our code. So this is all about organizing code and allowing us to not have to rewrite logic over and over and over again and get big, messy, awful code up here, and instead accomplish really specific and helpful goals by just calling a method. So we kind of have the setup and the definition on the right side, and we have the actual calling and performing the action on the left. So hopefully this all makes sense. Please let me know if you have questions, and I'll see you in the next video.